He would be the first to tell you this story. In fact, he already has, many times, to anyone willing to listen and to several people who were not. That is the first thing you need to understand about Draven. He is not a mystery. He does not hide what he is. He does not have a suppressed vulnerability or a secret wound that explains the performance. The performance is not covering anything. The man performing is exactly who he appears to be, and the fact that this seems impossible, that a person so comprehensively committed to his own spectacle must be compensating for something, is the assumption that everyone makes and that Draven finds, frankly, insulting. He was not pretending to be this, he became this. There is a difference. Jefes Polev. His name is Draven. He would prefer you say it with more emphasis. Jefes Polev. New here? Subscribe. Every week, a League of Legends story, told the way it deserves to be, heard. The streets of Basilich produced many things. Soldiers, criminals, people shaped by the specific pressure of a city that Noxus absorbed through force and then largely ignored, leaving the original inhabitants to negotiate survival on their own terms in the space between old loyalties and new authorities. What they rarely produced was someone like Draven, not because the ingredients weren't there. The city had no shortage of children who were stubborn, reckless, drawn to confrontation, congenitally unable to recognize when the odds were against them. What was rare was someone who combined all of those qualities with a genuine gift, a natural facility for combat that operated at a level the streets of Basilich had not previously encountered in someone so young, and a relationship with his own exceptionalism. That was not arrogance exactly, but something more absolute. Not belief that he was better. Mackley Street. The label was bracha, resquef, knowledge, bone deep, unchallengeable organizing principle level knowledge. He was an orphan. He had no institutional backing. He had no name that meant anything to anyone. He had his body, his reflexes, his audacity, and the specific quality of a person who has decided not consciously, not through deliberation, but as a structural fact of how they are built, that the world is going to notice them whether or not the world has been consulted on this plan. He fought people he should not have fought, older, larger, connected to things that made the calculation obviously unfavorable for anyone willing to run the calculation. Draven was not running the calculation. He was making a statement, and the statement was, I exist, and existence of this quality should be recognized. The only thing that kept him alive, through the portion of his childhood, that was genuinely trying to kill him, was his brother. Darius is everything Draven is not, in the specific way that siblings are sometimes everything. Each other is not. Where Draven performs, Darius simply is. Where Draven requires audience, Darius requires nothing outside the completion of the objective. Where Draven wants to be seen, Darius wants to win, and these are, it turns out, sufficiently different orientations to the same combat that they complement each other in a way that neither could have designed. When Basilich fell to Noxus, fell is the diplomatic way to say what happened, was absorbed by, force is more accurate. Draven made a decision that was stupid by any reasonable metric. He attempted to kill a Noxian commander named Cyrus. He failed. He was not built for the geometry of assassination, which is a craft of patience and concealment and the willingness to wait. He was built for the opposite of all three of those things. The attempt was loud, visible, and unsuccessful in the specific way that attempts are. Unsuccessful when the person making them is more interested in the gesture than the outcome. But it worked. Not in any planned sense. Cyrus looked at what had just tried to kill him. This reckless, gifted, completely undeterrable young man from the streets of a city he had just conquered, and saw something the Noxian military apparatus was, at bottom, designed to identify and absorb. Raw, material, potential. The kind of stubbornness that, pointed in the right direction, becomes an asset of extraordinary value. He took them both. Draven and Darius, the street orphan and his brother, entered the Noxian military by the most unusual possible route, being noticed by the commander they had just tried to murder. The years that followed should have been, by any standard narrative of military life, the years where both of them were forged into something lasting. Darius found this. He adapted with a thoroughness that suggested the Noxian military structure was not so much something he had joined as something he had always been waiting for, a framework that matched the quality of his particular gifts and rewarded them appropriately. Draven found the meals regular and the recognition insufficient. Like it's something he had. He was good. Genuinely exceptional, in the way that certain people are when they have been, training themselves through sheer necessity since before they knew what training was. In actual combat, he was devastating. Instincts that no curriculum had taught him, improvisation that formal technique could not account for, the specific advantage of someone who does not fight by the rules because no one was ever in a position to teach him the rules while also keeping him alive. But the military was not built around him, it was built around objectives, and objectives did not care whether Draven was brilliant in the execution. They cared whether the objective was wish achieved. The performance was incidental. The applause was non-existent. He left. Whether voluntarily or by institutional encouragement is a question the historical record has not settled, and Draven tells different versions depending on his audience and his mood. The Ionian campaign gave him something the military could not: different stages. He moved between units, not because he was unreliable, but because each posting was, from his perspective, an extended audition for an audience that kept not quite materializing. He was extraordinary. He knew it. He needed other people to know it in the specific, immediate, visceral way that watching something extraordinary happen in real time produces. The campaign's chaos gave him chances. It also gave him opponents worthy of what he could do. The Reckoners found him, or he found them. The arena tradition in Noxus was old, a formal space for trial by combat, the resolution of disputes, the public demonstration of capability in a culture that had always organized itself around strength. He understood it immediately and completely. Not as a system of justice, which was how it presented itself officially, but as a stage, and menu. The architecture of public spectacle with actual combat in the center. And he was made for it. Here's the thing about Draven in the arena that the people who dismiss him as purely vain consistently miss: he was exceptional at the actual combat part. The showmanship was layered on, top of genuine lethality. The axes moved the way they moved because the precision required to make them move that way. To throw, to spin, to catch, to redirect, to integrate the geometry of arc and velocity and timing into something that was also spectacle, demanded a level of technical mastery that most warriors could not achieve while simply trying to survive. The crowds filled for him. Then the wars ended and the crowds stopped filling. The supply of genuine high-stakes confrontations that the arena depended on dried up in the specific way that war-dependent economies dry up when the wars slow down. Draven watched the tribute seats empty and responded in the time-honored way of people who cannot tolerate the absence of recognition. He filled the space between himself and the missing applause with drink and gambling, and the company of people who were at least temporarily entertained. He was not at his best when Jericho Swain found him. Dwecky, he was recognizable, which was enough. Dwecky, Swain needed someone specific. A figure the Noxian public already associated with spectacle, with capability, with the kind of visible force that made a moment legible to a large crowd. He was reshaping the empire. He needed the reshaping to have witnesses. Draven was available, and Draven was always willing to be witnessed. The night Borum Darkwill fell and Swain took control of Noxus, Draven was there. He was on the balcony. He heard the crowd, and in the specific silence that preceded that crowd's recognition of what had just happened, the brief moment before the noise assembled itself into response, he felt something he had been chasing since Basilich. A Troud's recognizable than one of the fleeing nobles tried to run. Additionally aduabanapa vubbles, he did not think about it. He jumped from the balcony with both axes across a distance that the part of his brain that assessed distances had already processed and cleared as viable before the conscious part had finished framing the question. The man hit the ground. Draven landed. A beat of silence. The particular silence of a crowd that has just watched something it was not expecting. And then the noise came up like a wave. He caught his axes. He raised them. He grinned. In that moment, the glorious executioner was not a character he was playing. He was the thing itself. Someone so completely in the correct place for what he was built to be that the distinction between the person and the performance collapsed entirely. He has everything now: the parties, the prestige, the zeal of Noxus's most celebrated performer, which is a different kind of fame than soldier fame, but considerably more visible. He and Darius have found a working relationship that survives their fundamental differences by treating those differences as structural rather than personal. He campaigns occasionally because the field provides opponents the arena sometimes cannot, and because there is a quality of danger in genuine battle that the arena, for all its theatrical authenticity, cannot fully replicate. He remains dissatisfied, not in a hidden way, not in a way he would deny if asked. He would tell you himself, Noxus is not large enough. The name Draven should be known in places that have never heard a Noxian accent. The spectacle should be witnessed by people who have no context for what they're watching but recognize it anyway as something outside their previous experience of what a person could do with 2 axes and complete commitment to being unforgettable. Nutsachachi he is building toward that. He does not entirely know what it looks like. He knows what it feels like. The specific quality of a crowd that has just seen something it cannot believe it saw, condensed to its purest form, stripped of geography and language and context, pure recognition, pure witness. The world, knowing that Draven exists, plus chaos, he will settle for nothing less. He would also like you to know that he appreciates you being here for it. If this story reached you, subscribe. Every week, the full lore of a League of Legends champion, told the way it deserves to be heard.